All right, yet another day, and we will again keep discussing Midjourney. People keep sending their prompts online. They talk about their experiences, and they're trying to explain why this tool could be really useful for design processes and for visual explorations. Uh, I again wanted to, explicate the situation a little bit, and today I'm going to talk about divergence and convergence and what they mean for visual activities, visual creativity, and how Midjourney can help both diverge and converge. But there's something very crucial about this. If you are aware of what you're really trying to do, I think Midjourney and similar, text to image tools will serve you better. So with that, let's start. Okay, so in this presentation, let me say, I'm going to use some examples that I explored by using, prompts. And I think they cover a wide spectrum about our intentions, about how I was looking into these images, how I was kind of diverging from the idea, and then how I was converging to arrive at what I was trying to create. Uh, but before that, let me start with this meme that I saw, today. It's pretty interesting, and I think it's kind of accurate. So I just received the invite for Dolly 2 finally, but I've been tracking, the discussions online, and I've been trying to see what people have to say about, like comparing Dolly 2 to Midjourney. I think this is somewhat accurate, and I ended up, commenting a question on for a question on LinkedIn, who was trying to kind of like to find the similarities and differences between these two text to image tools. And I said, maybe DALL-E 2 is more literal. It's kind of like more photographic from what I've seen so far and from what I deciphered from the discussions, whereas Midjourney is more stylistic and stylistic in terms of like not being abstract, but it's more like trying to have a painter's style, right? So, and interestingly, somebody else today, sent this to Midjourney discussion and say the username is MORN1415, Morn1415, and if if this person says he or she, okay, try both, this is the results, and interestingly, he says Dolly 2 is like a well-behaving or trying to be a well-behaving photographer, while it's a cool, the mid journey is cool crazy painter. And I had a very similar feeling with that, and I kind of agree, and I will report on that as I explore more. Why is this important? And what do these all have to do with divergence and convergence and designing and visual exploration? So let's discuss that a little bit. So this user already says like compares like photography and painter, right? So one is like taking a photograph of something that we see, and then a painter is rather kind of like having his or her embodied action to create or digital tools to create some sort of painting. So there's like some sort of artistry which is in a way not captured directly from the surroundings or the environment. It's rather kind of like projected on a canvas, projected on a digital board, and so on and so forth. So, I wanted to give this is an old discussion, so it's kind of like I think it's almost outdated a little bit. But what I would say is, okay, I found this website, and I included the link at the bottom if you're interested in reading more. There's a quote there which says, the photographer reacts to the surroundings and takes a photo when she sees something interesting. A pretty kind of conventional description. The artist has a concept in his mind and is looking or creating something specific that relates to a particular set of ideas. But that's somewhat correct. It's not 100% correct in my mind because the photographer is doing the same thing, right? The photographer is not being inspired by surroundings, so it could just be like staged up in a crazy way, or the photographer has a special way of seeing, right? It's so the way a photographer sees is kind of similar to almost painting, I would say, right? Because because you frame the thing, you adjust the exposure, the white balance, and so on and so forth. So it's not that easy to let's say put it this way. If you want to just capturing stuff around, that's not really photography. So I just wanted to put it there to extend the discussion on photography and maybe painting. But this is going to help us with divergence and convergence. And I think there's no clear distinction between these kind of like visual activities. They always overlap. That as you like seeing is an active action, right? So seeing is intentional, right? So whether you are taking a photograph, or whether you're just kind of like looking around, whether you're painting, you have an intention of kind of like perceiving whatever is happening around you or creating some sort of like visual, right? So it's not that we're super passive and something is penetrating our, like lenses and burning the retina, so that we kind of like passively receive it. It's not really like that. And this is exactly what's happening with Midjourney. So I just wanted to talk about this by stepping in with a simple example, right? So this is, let's say, the prompt is something about interior of forest house during sunset, and there's like some furniture. I didn't go into detail that much because I didn't spend too much time on creating this image. It was okay, you can of course, with the prompt, you could make this much better. But the idea here is that, okay, the Midjourney gives you four images, right? So then you can kind of like pick and choose one, two, three, four, and then which is the moment that you start, of course, from your initial concept, initial idea, and you start uh, diverging, right? So you kind of like you have one idea, which is sunset, house, furniture, which is like one single concept, right? And then suddenly Midjourney gives you four. Okay, well, that's exactly what like the divergence is about, right? So you start kind of like, you start seeing like new things. So it's okay. I didn't, for instance, in this one, I didn't think for the windows to be like that capturing vertically all the trees, right? So I could say for this one. For this one, it's like I like the panoramic, let's say, the visual or the view outside, but then there's so much like the window panes are so large, I don't see anything about the house anymore, and so on and so forth. But then like let's say, oh, the latest image maybe at the bottom is this is so warm, so cozy, it's hazy, and I like the light effect. It's a little too orange, but I would go with that one. Okay, so that's the moment from you seeing the first four images, your idea kind of like expanding, diverging, and then you say, okay, I want to go with this one. Just pick one from the bottom four, pick one, and then you start kind of like trying to steer towards your visual idea. But here's the trick, right? The question is, did you have something like this at the beginning when you wrote the prompt down, or did it just became that thing as you saw the image, right? So again, there is no clear, I think, split or distinction here. So both could be the case, or any could be the case, and it's totally fine, right? So this is exactly why we're dealing with these kind of tools. So in the PDF, you can't see the link here, but as I was looking, I was going to draw this, let's say, the divergence and convergence diagram, but I did some Google homework and I found this really cool um, diagrams that are drawn by, let me see his name, Philip Angel, I think, Angel. And he did such a great job, right, drawing these. And I kind of like took them from his website, and I'm gonna send a message to him, thank him. And then I altered some of his diagrams to, serve my purpose here while explaining converging and divergence and convergence. And like when we think about design processes, well, it's like it's not a straight line, right? So people sometimes say, okay, there's a design problem, there's a visual problem, there's a visual goal, and we have to kind of like steer through them, and then we arrive at a solution. Where the solution resides is a question, right? So that's why you never know when the design work ends. Design work never ends, by the way. For instance, for architecture, even the building doesn't end when the construction is complete. Or an artwork is never done, like once it's complete, and so on and so forth. We can discuss about that later. But okay, this is one way to see the understand the design problem or the design flow, right? Design process flow. But again, nicely, like he's using in these diagrams, starting with the problem and then saying, okay, diverge, we create choices, we create options. Well, is this similar? Yes, exactly. This is like Midjourney, right? And then as you create, diverge and create options, then you start realizing some constraints, which is for Midjourney's case, it might be, just your appetite, right? So you don't like the image and then bam, it's gone. And then the other might be, the syntax that sometimes the tool may take what you're trying to say too literal, right? So literally trying to draw what you're saying, and then it's not what you expect, or maybe it's unable to capture the secondary, tertiary meanings of the words that you're typing. So it's not powerful enough to handle ambiguity, right? So those are kind of like the constraints that you're dealing with in Midjourney. And again, like I'm continuing with Philip's like divergence and convergence diagram here. And then we just discussed about that. You create choices, just make choices, and then in the light of constraints, what you want to do, you arrive at the solution. Okay, this is a simple way to explain this, but this can be also like studied further, and that's what I did with the by altering this diagram. But before that, so divergence and convergence again is applies in many disciplines, and applies to architecture, form finding in architecture, form finding in product design, and any kind of like design that is targeting for performance, right? So like performing parts and materials and so on and so forth. So here I'm just showing a bunch of lattices that are to be printed, to be 3D printed, and I'm showing how the parameters are affecting the result of the lattice. So some are thick, some are like much thinner, and I'm kind of like keeping one parameter the same, which is the cell size, right? So I'm not kind of like enlarging and reducing the size of cells, so I can have a controlled experiment. This is really similar to let's say taking your prompt and only changing a part of it, because if you want to alter your prompts in Midjourney from beginning to end, well, how are you going to control what you're really doing? How can you understand the inner workings of the tool, right? So you have to kind of like go step by step in the tool and change the parameters one by one, so you have a like greater understanding of the responses of the algorithm, so you can control it in a better way. And for instance, in some of these, you have some sort of let's say embedded, structures, which is double gyroid, right? So kind of like these structures are not touching each other, but they're kind of like nested within each other. But then we already know that that is not a good solution if you're trying to kind of like compress these things. They're going to be super hard, right? So that's the divergence part, just exploring this world, showing people, the power of, let's say, generative design and so on and so forth. And then one day, bam, you have the shoe, right? So this is the shoe that this is the 3D printed part that I designed. Actually, the rest of the shoe was designed by other designers at New Balance. But at some point, again, like expanding that world, you have to kind of like converge and have the product one day. And in this case, it needs to be a product that looks good, that feels good, that works, that is durable, and so on and so forth, right? So that's really important. Let's get back to this diagram about like divergence and convergence, and let's think what happens after we create choices. So sometimes we end up creating more, choices than we really need. And actually, all these digital tools, generative design tools, parametric tools, whatever you want to call them, um, ended up doing this for us, right? So we ended up creating so much noise besides all the intelligent stuff that we have been designing. So let's say the D, the red D, let's say represents the amount of or the number of options that we create while diverging, and the C, represents what we continue with after a while, right? So because we have to cull the totally unnecessary, let's say, options, designs, or the not so good looking images in Midjourney's case, and just keep going with the the smaller portion or the lesser number of options. So the question is, what is the proportion C over D? What is the percentage of the designs that you're getting is really, really important. So if you have a huge, gap between D and C, if D is like huge, so you're creating, let's say, 1 million options and you're only using, 5 of them, you are using your computing power, your own, let's say, time for some stuff that you're not going to use. So you're not really creating value. So there needs to be some sort of balance. But if you're not creating enough Ds, maybe you don't have enough many options to pick from, or there are already some designs, or there are more images that you need to work for to kind of like find it out on the way. So you have to kind of like go further, right? So that is also really important. So the D has to be an optimal number. Maybe a designer, a painter, or a photographer discovers on the way. Okay, whichever you are looking into, number C, convergence, number D, divergence, what counts here is the intention. Okay, so your intention is really, really, really important. And actually, that intention and experience is the thing that's going to determine how many options that you're going to create, how much time you will spend while creating those options, including Midjourney and your prompts, and how many of them you will use for a specific purpose. For instance, here I'm using, like a couple of let's say designs, that I generated by using AI, Midjourney, and the intention here is kind of like, sometimes I do that while doing the images, so I have the intention of using them for explaining people how the thing really works. Or sometimes I go back and I filter them so I can use the ones, I can pick from my design space, from my divergence, I kind of converge to the ones that I want to show you so I can explain what I'm trying to explain. Okay, so this is also important in a different fold, right? While using Midjourney, you can try to create an image which you want to match your the mental image that you have in your mind. Okay, so that is, let's say, I know what I want. I am looking for the right prompt to get it, and then it should look like the mental image that I have in my mind, and then you go for that, right? If you fail, you're like, okay, this is not working. I need to go back and change the prompts to again get what I'm trying to get. Okay, and this example is a good one for that. I think this is, you're already converging before you diverge, right? So because your mental image is kind of like almost there, right? So you don't have to go really crazy, diverge a lot, and you're okay with that, right? So you don't want to kind of like go in the wilderness and be inspired and like go crazy with the options, but you want to have this idea. You already have the idea, and you want to kind of like get the image that matches that. So that's a converging, like almost convergent already intention. So this was like Takia in Dubai, right? So like just very simple prompt. I think I put a couple of things there as well, but and it was there, bam, bam, right? So there's nothing too crazy, nothing groundbreaking, nothing too different than what I was envisioning. But then you can also start with a little more like divergent intentions, right? So here I am looking, I am asking the algorithm generate something about data and flux, right? So and it is somewhat a divergent idea, if you ask me, because I know I'm going to get colors. I know I'm going to get shapes, because when we say data, human beings have been representing data by using images for such a long time. So the tool, of course, is needs to use those, right? So this thing is trained by feeding images like that. I mean, it's not like it's not going to, as people say, AI is going to think what data looks like. No, it won't. AI, the algorithm behind this thing, will just take the images that are tagged as data or with data, and then blend them and give you something back. That's what it is, right? But still interesting, because I don't know if it's going to make a square or like circle and so on and so forth, which it did actually. And then I picked a couple of them And then here I'm showing the lineage, the development from step 1 to 7, which is the one at the end, bottom corner. And it's a divergent intention, right? So the first image I got had like very different images, which is like this number 1. And I picked one which was significantly different than the other one. So you can do this by using the stylize parameter already in Midjourney, right? So I covered that in my previous video, showing how stylized the parameter can affect the where this thing can steer. So if you have a like a divergent intention, you can kind of like put that number really high, so it goes super abstract, and you can explore a couple of ideas. If you're trying to converge and stay in the same realm or be literal, you can use a lower parameter, and so on and so forth. By the way, I blended these images on just made a video, so if you're interested, you can see that. Actually, it's playing behind me now. You can see that on my Instagram page. And okay, let's move forward. So I talked about the proportion of B2C. So in this case, what's happening is we expand for the data flux, right? So there are kind of like many images, like circles, other colors, different shapes, and so on. But I settle with this specific one among those like 4 options. I don't have the 4 options here, but you got the idea. So what I'm doing is I let the algorithm expand, right, Midjourney, and then I only look into a narrow area, which is the C, right? So I just kind of like want to continue with that because I want some sort of like visual coherency. So I'm not interested in making options. I'm rather interested in going from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and so on. So it's like parent to child, kind of like expansion that I'm trying to get to. And again, as I said, this is on LinkedIn. Oh, this is on Instagram. Sorry, I've been spending too much time on the social, like the platforms nowadays. But it was interesting to kind of like track this image 7 generations back, and I kind of like charted out how I generated this image and made an animation finally. And if you click this image, I'm going to share this PDF again. So if you click the image, it should take you directly to that image. Okay, so let's go super divergent, right? So this is botanical drawings of robotic species in Art Nouveau style. So this is more like, okay, I am going to let this thing go a little wild, right? So I will challenge it actually again, because I know what a botanical drawing looks like, more or less, or I can guess, with like statistics, like thinking about all the botanical images that I've seen so far. And then I'm thinking about like robotic parts, okay? And then the style, Art Nouveau, right? So when I combine them, I'm like, okay, it's going to give me something interesting, but I don't have any idea about the background. I don't have any idea like what's going to be merged with what is the percentage of, so I'm not using weights here. Again, in my previous video, I explained the effect of the weight parameter as well, but I'm not using them here. So I'm kind of like letting this thing run. And then it's super divergent, right? So like the idea is divergent. So how do you go with this? Again, like you can, try to like pick one image and try to converge, but your intention at the very beginning is you want to open up. You want this thing to kind of like show you the stuff that you haven't seen before, right? Which is interesting. All right. And then this may take you to follow different paths. So one of the challenges that I'm having in Midjourney is once you like, let's say 2 or 3 of the options out of the 4, it becomes really hard to kind of like expand from there, because I want to at least track all of the again the lineage of how these things kind of like go to the next generation. And then I want to do like number 2, number 3, and then number 3 of 3, and then like expand it, and then upscale it, and so on and so forth. So it becomes a little challenging, but the problem remains the same, or the description remains the same. That now we're looking into C1 over D or C2 over D, and how much, again, how much you're kind of like how many options you're creating, and then how like which ones you're kind of like picking to go towards the solution that you have in mind. Okay, I made a kind of like summary of this already, but if you start from the beginning, so the convergent, divergent, and super divergent options. So the first one is I somewhat know what to expect. I talked about that. The second one is I kind of guess what I will get, but I don't really know. And then this should be not true, but sure. I am not sure what will appear, right? So that's the I think the super divergent, more open option to follow. And oh, okay, I fixed the sure here. So then actually I put a fourth one, which is the donut-shaped space station. So this is like, and it's the good intention. So it's the like super divergent, right? So I'm like, in this one actually, this one was harder to guess than the drawing one, the third one, because I am not sure if it is going to embed the donut into the mechanical parts or the volumetric parts of the space station, or or would it was gonna do this. I didn't know, right? So I was really clueless compared to the third one. So this was like, okay, get me inspired, create something humans cannot dream of. So I put this here because I heard it in a couple of discussions. I don't think this, I don't agree with this kind of statement, because anything AI can generate, humans could dream of, right? Because it's not a competition of, between the man and the machine and saying who can dream like crazier stuff. Human beings, actually, AI is a creation of human beings, and on all the images that you're seeing are the extensions of humans. They are our dreams, right? So, in that respect, I think anything that Midjourney creates as something that a human could dream. Okay, I'll put it that way. But in like anyway, this is I like the lost intention, meaning lost in a good way. Like you go into a wilderness and like you walk and you don't know what's gonna come next, and which path you will need to take to survive. And I think that's very kind of like adventurous and visual meandering, if you will, to discover. Okay, now this brings us to the discussion about Midjourney or other software platforms, or the people who are trying to get into design, get into and get some technical skills. So I frequently get this question from students of architecture, product design, artists. It's like, okay, what software should I learn so I can be successful in the future? And the same thing, okay, people now, a lot of people are using Midjourney because it's on paper it's very easy to use, right? So you don't have to have lots of skills to start using it. You just need to be able to type a couple of sentences and it works for you, which is great. I'm not demeaning anything about it. It's really important, and I'm really happy that that kind of a tool is available. So we can generate millions of images and everybody gets bored, and then the real questions arise. What are we going to do with this thing? Okay, back to the what software should I learn question. So I am digging into Midjourney and I'm trying to use it in an educated, in a trained way, if you will. And I would like to share this knowledge with others so that we don't create like more, many millions of images that we don't need. Right? So let's get aware. Let's sharpen our skills, and then produce more interesting stuff altogether. So I would say, if you are interested in anything that that you want to kind of pursue in terms of like skills that you would like to develop, learn anything that you're interested in, right? So don't follow the trends, don't follow other people, don't try to learn something because they're going to pay you a certain amount of thing for that. Don't do that. Learn something that you're passionate about. That's going to give you the infinite fuel as you move forward. You need that fuel, because if you do it for others, you're going to run out of fuel. Learn something that you're interested in, but learn it really well. Okay, be the master. Spend more time. Like, I don't know, it's like 1:40 a.m. now. That's I'm just finding time to record this video, and as I'm talking about this, I'm learning about it, believe it or not. Like as I'm trying to share this knowledge, I'm trying to become more precise, more explicit about what I'm trying to say. So I have to spend more time with this thing to understand, so I can talk about it. And yeah, and for instance, for Midjourney, okay, you need to feel that you're holding the leash, and then you have to make the software follow your intention. Same for Rhino Grasshopper, same for Photoshop, same for After Effects, same for processing, scripting interface, same for Python. Whatever you're trying to do, it's just like you need to have the leash in your hands, and don't expect the tool to do everything for you. That's the expectation from AI, and it's not going to work that way. It's not working that way yet. So you have to have lots of skills to steer these things to the direction that you want to go. So this requires time, of course, and effort, and developing both hard and soft skills. Meaning hard skills like it's kind of like learning coding and visual programming and so on, and soft skills of like setting goals, tracking them, and having an intention to like solve a problem, understand a problem, and creating value, being critical, and so on and so forth. So for Midjourney, Savvy users are around like 5 to 10,000 images already, or more. That's what I'm seeing. And but very important thing is, I think the refined images are coming from the people who are already trained in the space. Space meaning visual arts, and design, and any kind of like who are trained in like visual activity. So their eyes and their mental images are kind of like refined already, so they're able to produce those images. So it's not only like you put the hours, but not only learning the technique. This is not maybe specific for Midjourney, but for other software that you want to learn. But then you have to develop your other skills about design. In Midjourney's case, about aesthetics, composing, visual arts, architecture, and so on and so forth. So if you know about those things, actually, you take a shortcut to get there. So while learning Midjourney, it's maybe or using Midjourney or using any kind of software, you have to look into maybe history of art, or maybe artistic styles, or watch good good movies instead of spending your time on watching all the stuff that are kind of like on these streaming channels and so on. I mean, most of that they're rubbish anyway. So you have to build timeless skills. So all these skills that I'm talking about are timeless, meaning they're going to apply today, they're going to apply tomorrow, they apply for the last 100, 200, 500 years, and so on and so forth, right? So that also makes you very strong for and future proof, right? So about like people ask, oh, am I going to lose my job? Again, the same question that I covered in the previous video. Is AI going to take over and so on? Well, if you build your timeless skills, people will always need your insight and your reflection and your knowledge and your approach to the problems, and they will learn from you. So you try to build those. Okay, and then with that, of course, like how are you going to do this? Well, there are books. You can read books. YouTube is amazing, right? So like I never thought it would become so big, and I never thought that I would be here. Speaking about Midjourney, I really didn't expect it even like when I started using Midjourney, but I got excited, which is cool. And I'm trying to do this in a very critical way too, right? So I wish somebody was kind of like telling these to me, but I have to find my way. And learn from others, right? So I'm trying to become a resource for you too, and then you can teach yourself by using available these resources. So with that, again, I will remind that this PDF that you have seen in this video will be online. I'm just going to put the link. Please follow the channel and find me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be sharing, all this stuff on LinkedIn and Instagram and so on. And as you download this PDF, you're going to see these links, so you can kind of like access my Medium page as well. And if you follow me, it's just an encouragement for you to kind of like push through and move forward, right? So I need that support to move forward. So I really appreciate that kind of support. And in the previous video, I prepared this matrix to show how the parameters in Midjourney version 3 works. And it was again like a critical approach that's just trying to explain and let's say give some hints to the newcomers, to the users, so that you spend less time in trying to get to what you're trying to achieve in Midjourney. But at the same time, I kind of like, refer, let's say the results that I got, and I try to kind of like exemplify where those images could be used, how like where they would find their like domain of let's say valuable use and so on. So please check that video and this PDF too. If you cannot access it, you can always send me a request on LinkedIn or Instagram, and LinkedIn is better because I see them more frequently now, and I respond. So I ended up sending this PDF literally, over emails, over LinkedIn to tens of people so far. Okay, and finally, again, as I said, if you want to support and if you want to see more of these videos, today about Midjourney, tomorrow about Midjourney again, maybe, but then things are going to change, right? So what I share is if you again like look into my like previous videos, it's always about meaning and value and using these advanced techniques of computing, computational design, digital tools in architecture, in design, and in any sort of like simulations or making artwork to create meaning and value. Be critical, use these tools to the extent, but never kind of like lose yourself in them, right? So that's the point. So if you want to listen to this about these more, if you want to hear more about these kind of like technologies and how we can approach them in a human-centric way, please subscribe and hit that bell button, right? That's what they say on YouTube, so I'm going to say that too. With that, I also started a computational design team on LinkedIn. So it's been, I think, 3 days. This is the third day or fourth day that I started, and I really didn't advertise it that much. And we have, actually, it's we, sorry, it's not me, it's not I, it's us, 277 members. I am expecting this thing to be one of the really, let's say, important hubs in computational design, domains in which we are going to share a lot of knowledge. So that all these people, I luckily know most of them, and they contributed to the field for decades. So there are people who contributed to the computational design field or digital design field 10, 20, 30 or more years. So that is very, very interesting and very kind of engaging to see these people here. We will be sharing, lots of resources, probably videos like this, books, book reviews, papers. Also, there's going to be lots of debate. I expect lots of discussions in a good way. So we will hopefully create and discover some new ideas there too. With that, I would like to thank you to the community. Actually, my recent videos got lots of interest from the people around the world, and that just again made me like push and prepare this presentation and share it with you, right? So it's some like it's a little bit of extra work, but I really enjoy putting all these images together and make it visually explicit and understandable for everyone. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.